It's a strange kind of exhaustion, not the kind you get from physical work, but a deeper, more persistent weight that settles into your bones when you're caught in a cycle that feels endless. I'm 26, and most days, I wake up already tired, knowing I'm about to navigate a maze where every turn is another cost, another pinch, another reminder of just how tight the margins have become. The economic environment around me feels like a storm that never clears, and I'm just trying to keep my footing without getting swept away. I grew up with the idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll eventually find stability, that you'll be able to afford a decent place, maybe a car, maybe even start saving for the future. But the reality I face is so far from that. Rent climbs every year like clockwork, faster than my paycheck grows. Groceries, utilities, transportation, everything follows the same relentless pattern. And no matter how much I tighten my belt, the number at the end of the month never looks any better. Some mornings I stare at my bank account like it's a puzzle I can't solve. $48.75. That's what I have left after bills. It's barely enough to cover food until my next paycheck, let alone anything else. I have a job that I like. I'm a barista at a coffee shop, so I'm surrounded by warmth and the smell of roasted beans, but that doesn't pay enough to cover the cost of living here. I pick up extra shifts whenever I can, but there's only so much time in a day. And when I do, I'm often too drained to enjoy anything else. The pressure isn't just about money, though that's the obvious part. It creeps into everything, my relationships, my mood, my sense of self. I avoid invitations to dinners or weekend outings because I know it'll mean spending money I don't have. I lie sometimes, saying I have plans when really I'm just counting my coins, trying to decide if I can afford a bus ticket or if I need to walk. I feel isolated, even though I know so many people are going through the same thing. It's hard to admit, even to myself, how much it hurts to say no again and again. Debt is another shadow that follows me everywhere. Credit card bills, student loans, they pile up, and it feels like I'm just shuffling them around, paying the minimums, never making a dent. Sometimes I dream about being free of it all, about waking up one day and not having to check my phone for bank alerts or calculate my budget down to the last cent. But those dreams feel distant, almost like stories from another life. I used to imagine what I'd do with extra money. Maybe take a trip somewhere, anywhere but here, to reset and breathe. Or finally buy a proper winter coat instead of patching up the one I have. Maybe save enough to move out of this cramped apartment that's seen better days. But each month, those hopes get pushed back. The future feels like a horizon that recedes no matter how far I walk. Some days, I cope by focusing on small victories. Making a nice meal at home, even if it's just pasta and canned tomatoes. Writing in my journal, trying to make sense of the tangled feelings. Calling a friend for a long talk. Those moments remind me that life isn't just about survival, even if survival is exhausting enough right now. I also try to remind myself that this isn't my failure. The system is rigged in ways that make it harder for people like me to get ahead. Inflation eats away at paychecks, rent spikes without warning, and wages stay stubbornly low. There's this constant tension between wanting to be responsible and wanting to just breathe for a moment without worry. It's a balancing act that wears me down. Sometimes, I imagine what it would be like if things changed, if policies shifted to make housing affordable, if wages reflected the cost of living, if support systems existed for people stuck in this cycle. Would I feel lighter? More hopeful? Probably. But until then, I keep moving forward the best I can, even if it's slow and painful. The hardest part is not knowing when it will end. Not knowing if the years I'm sacrificing now will ever lead to something better. I remind myself that I'm more than my bank balance, that my worth isn't defined by how much I earn or how many bills I can pay on time. But some nights, that's a hard truth to hold on to. So here I am, trying to live, trying to hope, trying to survive the weight of a system that's bigger than me but still shapes every part of my day. And maybe, someday, I'll get to breathe easier, but until then, I'll keep telling my story, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're not alone in this. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I never thought I'd be this person, the one who counts every cent, who calculates and recalculates bills before even considering anything else. Yet here I am, late 20s, feeling like I'm running in place while the cost of living sprints miles ahead. It's a strange kind of exhaustion, the weight of financial pressure that never really lifts, no matter how hard you work or how tight you hold on to your paycheck. I wake up every morning with this low, gnawing anxiety. The kind that starts before your feet hit the floor, a quiet reminder that the bills won't wait, that rent is looming like a storm cloud over my tiny apartment. My job pays okay, enough to scrape by in theory, but theory doesn't pay the utilities, the groceries, the car insurance that somehow always sneaks up higher every year. It's like the system is rigged, everything gets more expensive, but my paycheck barely budges. I can't catch a break. Most days, my decisions come down to a brutal math problem: what can I afford to cut without falling apart? Do I skip the grocery store and eat rice and beans again? Can I hold off on that dentist appointment until next month? Should I keep my phone plan or downgrade to a burner just to save $20? These aren't choices I ever wanted to make in my late 20s, but they've become routine. Sometimes, when the pressure mounts too high, I feel this tight, suffocating sense of being trapped. Like I'm in a small box, walls closing in as expenses keep rising, rent hikes, gas prices, inflation on the little things I rely on. It's a relentless cycle. I've tried to budget, track every dollar, get creative with side gigs, but the more I stretch, the more the gap widens. It's exhausting. What's worst is how it's bleeding into my emotional world. Money stress isn't just about numbers, it's about feeling powerless, invisible, stuck in a system that doesn't seem to care. Sometimes I lie awake at night, heart racing, wondering if this is all there is. How do people dream when the next paycheck is barely enough to keep the lights on? I feel guilty for wanting more comfort, more security, a real sense of freedom, when it seems like so many around me are just as squeezed. I remember when I used to dream big. College graduation felt like a launch pad. I pictured myself traveling, buying a home someday, maybe even starting a family. I wanted to explore the world, try new things, feel alive beyond the paycheck-to-paycheck grind. But those dreams have been shelved, postponed indefinitely. It feels irresponsible to hope for them right now. Instead, my dreams have shrunk to smaller things: paying off a credit card, saving enough for an emergency fund, maybe having a night out without counting the cost beforehand. Sometimes, that feels like survival, not living. I cope the best way I can. I find solace in small victories, like managing to pay off a bill early or discovering a new free hobby that takes my mind off the stress. I try to keep perspective, reminding myself I'm not alone. So many of my friends are struggling with the same invisible fight. We swap tips, share frustrations, and sometimes just vent because it's the only way to breathe. But it's hard not to feel like the system is designed to keep me in this cycle. Every raise at work is swallowed up by rising costs. Every attempt to save is undercut by some unexpected expense: a broken appliance, a medical bill, a sudden price jump. It's like swimming against a tide that only gets stronger. Still, I cling to hope, even if it feels fragile. I believe someday this pressure will ease, that maybe the economy will shift, that I'll find a way out of this trap. I want to believe my dreams aren't dead, just delayed. I want to believe that hard work and persistence will pay off, that I'll get to a place where I can breathe easier, plan ahead, and maybe, just maybe, start living again instead of just surviving. Until then, I keep going, one careful step at a time, one paycheck at a time, carrying the weight but refusing to let it define me completely. Because underneath all the financial stress, there's still that spark. And it's what keeps me trying. It's hard to put into words exactly how it feels to be caught in this endless loop, the one where your income barely stretches to cover your expenses, and every month the gap widens just a little more. I'm 27, working a steady job, but no matter how hard I hustle, I can't shake the feeling that I'm running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up beneath me. The cost of living rises like a tide, relentless and indifferent, while my paycheck stays stubbornly flat. It's exhausting. It's terrifying. Every morning, I wake up with a knot in my stomach, running through a mental checklist: rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, student loans, and then the little things: phone bills, occasional doctor visits, that one forgotten subscription that quietly drains a few dollars every month. I used to think budgeting was just about tracking where the money goes, but now it's more like a tightrope walk. One misstep, and suddenly you're scrambling to cover something unexpected, like a broken phone screen or a delayed paycheck. I remember when I first moved out of my parents' house. I was so full of hope and excitement, thinking about building my own life, making my own choices, and finally feeling independent. But independence came with a price I hadn't fully anticipated: the sheer weight of financial responsibility. It's not just rent and bills, it's the emotional toll of constantly worrying, second-guessing every decision, and the nagging fear that one day I'll just fall through the cracks. Eating out? Forget it. Even the idea of grabbing a coffee with a friend feels like a luxury. I can't count the number of times I've said no to invitations, not because I don't want to go, but because the $15 or $20 it would cost feels like a reckless gamble. Friends don't always understand. They ask why I never want to do anything fun, why I'm always the one suggesting cheap or free alternatives. I try to explain, but it feels like I'm speaking a different language. Money stress isn't something you can easily share over a weekend brunch. Shopping for groceries is a strategic operation. I scan for sales, clip coupons, buy store brands, and plan meals around what's cheapest that week. It's a constant game of sacrifice. Fresh produce is often out of reach because it's more expensive, so I end up relying on canned or frozen options. I'm aware of how much this impacts my health, but there just isn't room in the budget for all the healthy choices. It's a harsh irony: money controls not only what I can do but also what I can eat, how I feel, and even how long I might live. One of the most frustrating things is watching the cost of housing climb higher and higher. My rent has gone up twice in the last 2 years, each time eating more into my paycheck. When I moved in, it felt manageable. Now it's a crushing weight. I think about trying to save for a down payment, but that dream feels so distant it might as well be on another planet. It's not just the price tag, it's the time and effort it takes to save when every month barely breaks even. I'm stuck renting, stuck paying someone else's mortgage, stuck with the feeling that no matter how hard I work, I'm building someone else's wealth, not my own. Bills pile up in the background like a dark cloud, utilities spike with the seasons, healthcare costs lurk around every corner, and that student loan debt feels like a chain wrapped tight around my ankles. I sometimes wonder if I'd be better off dropping out of the race entirely, but then who would pay for the basics? What other choice do I have? The system feels rigged in favor of those who already have a cushion, and for people like me, it's a constant uphill battle. Emotionally, it's a roller coaster. Some days, I'm hopeful. I convince myself that if I just work a little harder, save a bit more, maybe things will change. Other days, I feel numb. The weight of financial stress drags me down, making even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Sleep doesn't come easy, and when it does, it's restless, haunted by worry and what-ifs. I sometimes feel invisible, like I'm barely keeping my head above water, but no one really sees how much I'm struggling beneath the surface. I cope by finding small pockets of joy and gratitude where I can. I cherish quiet evenings at home, long walks in the park, and the occasional free event in the city. I've learned to lean on a few close friends who understand or, at the very least, don't judge. Sometimes I journal my frustrations, pouring my fears onto paper as a release. But coping doesn't erase the underlying problem, it just helps me survive another day. And then there are the dreams I've had to put on hold. I wanted to travel, see new places, expand my horizons. I dreamed of further education, of switching careers to something more fulfilling and better paid. I imagined buying a little apartment someday, a space that was truly mine, a place I could call home without fear. I wanted to start a family eventually, to build a life full of stability and love. But all of that feels suspended in some indefinite future, as if the system itself is pressing pause on my life, demanding that I just focus on surviving. It's hard not to feel trapped. Like no matter what I do, the rising cost of everything will always outpace what I earn. I see headlines about inflation, housing crises, and stagnant wages, and it's like the whole country is running a race I wasn't prepared for, and I'm stuck at the starting line. The system feels impersonal, cold, and indifferent, designed in a way that rewards risk and capital but punishes the everyday person who just wants to live with dignity. Sometimes, I wonder if this is what adulthood is supposed to feel like, if financial stress is just a rite of passage everyone must endure. But deep down, I know it doesn't have to be this way. I believe in a future where people aren't constantly afraid to open a bill or check their bank account. I hope for a world where opportunity isn't a privilege reserved for a few but a reality for all. For now, I keep going, one paycheck, one careful decision at a time. I hold on to the hope that someday, maybe soon, the tide will turn. Until then, I'm learning to live with the discomfort, finding strength in small victories, and dreaming quietly, stubbornly, of a life where money no longer feels like a cage but a tool for freedom. This is my truth, raw, unvarnished, and real. It's the story of many young adults trying to carve out a place in a world that often seems stacked against them. And maybe, by sharing it, I can remind someone else that they're not alone in this struggle, that together, we can imagine and work towards something better. I wake up every morning with a knot in my stomach. It's not the usual kind of anxiety that comes from big events or looming deadlines. It's a quiet, persistent weight that's become part of my bones. Money. Or rather, the constant, suffocating pressure of not having enough. The bills pile up, rent rises again, groceries feel like a luxury, and my paycheck stretches thinner every month. It's like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, no matter how fast I push, no matter how hard I try to keep pace. Some days, I stare at my bank account with a mix of disbelief and frustration. How did it get to this point? I work hard. I'm not lazy or careless. But it feels like the world around me is rigged in a way that makes climbing out impossible. Every expense grows faster than my income does. Rent jumps again, my landlord says inflation, property taxes, maintenance. The grocery store's prices have shot up, and even basic things like toiletries now make me hesitate. Utilities, transportation, the occasional night out, all numbers that feel like sneaky little monsters biting away at what little I have left. It's exhausting to live like this. I've had to become hyper-aware of every penny, every purchase. I carry a notebook, jotting down expenses, planning meals meticulously so I don't waste a single bite of food. I've become an expert at discount hunting, coupon clipping, and rationing electricity so the bill doesn't spike. Sometimes I skip the bus just to save $1, walking miles with aching feet because I can't afford the fare. My social life has shrunk to fit inside this tight budget, which means a lot of isolation. People don't always get why I decline invitations or disappear suddenly. It's easier not to explain than to hear the pity or disbelief. The emotional toll? It's massive. There's this persistent hum of anxiety that never quite lets up. Nights when I lie awake, calculating if I can make rent next month, whether I'll have enough left to buy medicine or toiletries. The shame that comes with asking for help, even from close friends or family, because it feels like admitting defeat. And beneath it all, a gnawing sense of hopelessness, like no matter how hard I work or save, the system is stacked against me. Sometimes I wonder how I got here. Growing up, I had dreams, vivid, wild dreams. I wanted to travel, to explore places beyond my small town. I imagined going back to school, earning a degree that would open doors, a future where I could breathe a little easier. I saw myself starting a career, maybe even owning a home someday. But those dreams feel like they belong to someone else now, a version of me that got lost along the way. Instead, I'm stuck in survival mode. The future is blurry and scary. Saving for anything big is a joke, emergencies wipe out any small buffer I manage to build. The concept of retirement seems like a cruel fantasy. And yet, even with all this weight, I cling to hope, not the shiny, unrealistic kind, but a stubborn flicker that keeps me moving. Maybe, someday, things will shift. Maybe I'll find a better job, or a break in this relentless cycle. Maybe the economy will slow down and prices will stabilize. Maybe I'll have the energy left to chase those old dreams again. Until then, I cope the best I can. I find small moments of joy in unlikely places, a good book borrowed from the library, a walk in the park, the quiet comfort of a shared meal with a friend who understands. I remind myself that this isn't a reflection of my worth or potential, just a harsh reality I have to navigate. And on the hardest days, I allow myself to feel the frustration and sadness fully, because ignoring it only makes it louder. Being trapped in this system feels like living in a glass box. You see the world moving, people advancing, growing, building their futures, while you're stuck watching, trying to catch your breath. It's isolating and demoralizing, but also oddly human. I'm not alone in this, even if it feels that way sometimes. Millions are running the same treadmill, trying to outrun a system that's set to leave most behind. I don't know what the next year or 5 will bring. But I know I want to believe in a future where financial pressure isn't the defining story of my life. Where I can make choices based on dreams, not just survival. Where the weight on my chest lifts, even if just a little. For now, I keep waking up, keep pushing forward, and keep holding on to the hope that someday, maybe, I'll breathe free again. That's the hardest thing, living with pressure, but never letting go of hope. I never imagined money would feel like such a heavy chain around my neck. When I was a kid, I thought being an adult meant freedom, freedom to buy what I wanted, go where I pleased, and finally live on my own terms. But now, at 27, it feels more like I'm trapped in a slow, suffocating grind where every step forward is met with 2 steps back. The cost of living keeps climbing, rent, groceries, utilities, but my paycheck barely stretches further than it did 2 years ago, if not less. It's a constant pressure, like drowning in slow motion. Most mornings, I wake up with this knot in my stomach before I even get out of bed. I run through the math of the week in my head, how much I have, how much I owe, what bills are due. It's a calculation I've memorized but still hate to face. Rent is always the biggest hit, taking nearly half of my income. Then there's student loans, car insurance, phone bills. And on top of that, I have to budget for food, transport, and the occasional medical expense. There's barely anything left over. Some weeks, I skip meals just to make sure the bills get paid. I remember the early days after college, when I believed I could climb out of this hole quickly. I had dreams of moving to a nicer neighborhood, maybe traveling for the first time, or even saving enough to start my own small business someday. But those dreams keep slipping further away, like they're floating on a horizon I can't quite reach. I've had to postpone nearly everything that made me feel alive, a proper vacation, new clothes, even social nights out. The guilt of spending money on anything non-essential weighs heavily, as if I'm betraying my own future. The economic environment makes every choice feel like a test. Grocery shopping, for instance, used to be a simple errand, now it's a strategic mission. I watch prices like a hawk, comparing brands, buying in bulk only when it's cheaper, and constantly battling the temptation of convenience food because cooking from scratch takes time I don't always have. I've learned to live with hand-me-downs and clearance racks, knowing full well that the gap between what I want and what I can afford will never fully close. Emotionally, it's exhausting. There are days when I feel invisible, like the system is designed to keep people like me just afloat, never enough to really thrive. Sometimes I catch myself spiraling into anxiety or hopelessness, the what-ifs of never breaking free, of always living paycheck to paycheck. The shame that comes with that is suffocating. I don't want to admit it to my friends or family because I'm afraid they'll see me as a failure or a burden. So I put on a brave face, but inside I'm tired, so tired. I cope the best I can. I've found some small comforts in routines, late-night walks that clear my head, journaling to spill out the frustration, and trying to focus on gratitude for the little things, like the warmth of sunlight on my skin or the sound of rain against my window. I cling to those moments because they remind me there's still life beyond the numbers. I also lean on a few close friends who understand that my struggles aren't just bad luck but part of a bigger, harsher reality. There's a cruel irony in wanting to live simply but feeling constantly overwhelmed by the cost of even the simplest things. I'm caught in a system where inflation outpaces raises, where job security feels like a distant memory, and where financial advice often feels like a lecture for someone who's never had to worry about the basics. The very idea of getting ahead feels like a myth. Every time I get a small raise, the rent goes up the next month. Every time I save a little, an unexpected expense wipes it out. Despite all this, I still hold on to hope, maybe stubbornly so. I hope for a future where I can breathe without counting pennies, where I can invest in myself without guilt, and where I can finally feel like I belong in a world that doesn't treat me like a statistic. I dream of owning a home, having stable healthcare, maybe even starting a family someday. But for now, those dreams are just faint lights at the end of a long tunnel. I often wonder if people who've never lived under this kind of financial strain can understand how it feels. It's not just the lack of money, it's the constant mental toll, the invisible weight that shapes every decision and chips away at your sense of self-worth. Being young shouldn't mean feeling this trapped and powerless. It shouldn't mean living with the constant fear that one small misstep could unravel everything. So I keep pushing forward, day by day. I try to remind myself that this is not a failure, it's survival. And maybe someday, those postponed dreams will catch up to me. Until then, I'll keep fighting to find moments of peace in the chaos, hoping that one day, freedom won't feel like a distant fantasy but something real and within reach. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all deserve? Some days, I wake up with a knot in my chest that won't go away until I've paid all the bills for the month. It's like a dull ache that settles deep, a constant reminder that I'm trapped in a cycle I can't escape. Every morning feels like walking on a treadmill that's speeding up just as fast as I try to keep pace, and the ground beneath me never quite feels solid. I'm 27, living in a small apartment I can barely afford on the outskirts of the city. The rent is a monthly punch to the gut that eats up more than half of my paycheck. And that paycheck? It's stubbornly the same as it was 2 years ago, maybe even less when you factor in inflation. Meanwhile, everything else, the groceries, utilities, transportation, keeps climbing. The price of milk, bread, even a cup of coffee at the corner cafe feels like a silent judgment, reminding me that the money I make is shrinking in value every single day. I work a full-time job in marketing, something I studied for and once thought would set me up for a good life. But the economy feels like a beast that's always hungry, devouring the security I hope to build. I take on freelance gigs when I can, squeezing extra hours out of my days, but it's never enough to get ahead. I'm treading water, just trying to keep my head above the rising tide of expenses. The strangest part is how this pressure infiltrates every choice I make, even the small ones. When I walk into a grocery store, I'm constantly calculating, should I buy the cheaper brand even if it tastes worse? Can I skip the occasional treat without feeling like I'm missing out on life? I've learned to live off frozen vegetables and bulk rice, meals that keep me fed but drain my spirit after a while. Going out with friends means dodging fancy dinners or pricey drinks, opting instead for cheap beer in someone's cramped apartment. It feels like I'm living a half-life. There are dreams I used to hold tightly, visions of travel, further education, or even just upgrading to a nicer place with a bit of green space. Those dreams have gathered dust on a shelf somewhere in my mind. Each time I entertain them, I'm pulled back by the weight of unpaid bills and looming rent notices. They say you can't put a price on happiness, but right now, happiness seems like a luxury reserved for someone else, in another life. The emotional toll is heavy. Sometimes I catch myself holding back tears, not because I'm ashamed, but because I'm tired. Tired of the uncertainty, the constant balancing act, the feeling that no matter how hard I work, the goalposts keep moving. Anxiety and hopelessness are unwelcome but persistent companions. At night, I lie awake wondering if this is all there is, that I'm destined to struggle forever, trapped in a system designed to keep people like me just barely afloat. I try to cope by focusing on the little things that bring me peace, a good book, a long walk, a call with a friend who understands. Sometimes I let myself dream quietly, imagining a future where I'm not just surviving but thriving. I think about going back to school, maybe changing careers, or starting something on my own. But those ideas always come with the heavy caveat of if only I had the time or money. I've learned to celebrate small victories, managing to save $5 one week, negotiating a slightly better deal on my phone plan, or simply making it through a tough day without breaking down. These moments are fragile but vital. They remind me that I'm not completely powerless, even if the system feels rigged. What keeps me going is the faint hope that things can change. Maybe not tomorrow, or next month, but someday. I hold on to that hope because without it, I'm not sure where I'd find the strength to keep trying. I want to believe that hard work should mean something more than just making ends meet, that there's a future beyond this constant squeeze. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I imagine what it would feel like to live without this weight on my shoulders, to wake up excited about the day instead of anxious about the bills. That vision feels distant, but it also feels real enough to keep me going. Maybe one day, I'll be able to look back at this time and see it as a chapter one survived, not the whole story. Until then, I keep moving forward. I keep making tough choices, juggling my budget, and pushing through the exhaustion. Because despite everything, I still want to believe in a future where I'm more than just a person caught in the relentless grind of an economy that never stops demanding more. I never imagined that money would feel like a chain around my neck, tightening every single day. When I was a kid, I thought adults had it all figured out. You work hard, get paid, pay your bills, and maybe save a little for something fun or meaningful. But now, standing here at 27, I realize how wrong that was. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up every month. No matter how fast I move, I'm still stuck in the same place, maybe even falling behind. My paycheck barely covers rent, groceries, and the essentials, and even then, some months it doesn't. I see the prices going up everywhere, the grocery store shelves, the utility bills, the gas station, even that small coffee I used to treat myself to. Inflation isn't just a number I hear about on the news, it's a real weight I feel pressing down on every choice I make. Every day starts with a quick mental math of how much do I have, and what absolutely needs to get paid today. Sometimes I skip meals, not because I'm hungry or don't want to eat, but because I have to stretch every dollar. I try to remind myself that this is temporary, but temporary has stretched into years. I'm tired. Not just physically, it's an exhaustion that sinks into my bones. I work 2 part-time jobs, both far from ideal but necessary. My first job pays a little above minimum wage, the second is seasonal, so the income is unpredictable. Between the two, I make enough to keep the lights on, but not much more. I've cut back on everything, no nights out, no new clothes, no weekend getaways. Even socializing has become a luxury because I can't afford to buy drinks or pay for public transport. I sometimes feel invisible, like I'm watching life happen from the sidelines while everyone else seems to be moving forward. I postponed dreams I once thought were non-negotiable. For years, I wanted to save for a car, not because I crave luxury, but because reliable transportation means a chance for better jobs, less stress, and independence. Now I'm barely saving enough for emergencies, and those get drained as soon as something unexpected happens, like a broken phone screen or a doctor's visit. That dream feels more distant every month. College was supposed to be my way out, but the student loan debt is a constant shadow. I'm paying off the interest before even touching the principal. I sometimes wonder if all that studying and sacrifice was worth it. The jobs I qualify for barely keep up with rising living costs, and the pressure mounts. Emotionally, it's draining. The anxiety about money creeps into every part of my life. It's hard to sleep, hard to focus, and harder still to imagine a future that looks anything but stressful. I catch myself avoiding conversations about money with friends or family because I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or failing. But inside, there's this gnawing sense of shame. Why can't I make it work? Am I just not trying hard enough? The system feels rigged against people like me, those without safety nets or connections. Sometimes, the feeling of being trapped is overwhelming. The expenses grow faster than my income, like some cruel joke. Rent went up twice last year, grocery bills feel like they've doubled in a few years. Utilities climb with every season. And yet, my wages have barely budged. It's a relentless uphill battle, and the harder I push, the steeper the climb. To cope, I've learned to find small moments of peace in the chaos. Reading, even if it's just library books, gives me a temporary escape. Walking in the park helps clear my head, even if it means walking past cafes I can't afford. I've become really good at budgeting, tracking every cent like a hawk. Sometimes I treat myself to tiny indulgences, a chocolate bar, a favorite song on repeat, things that remind me I'm still human, still deserving of joy. Despite everything, I cling to hope. I dream of a day when money won't be the constant source of stress. When I can take a weekend off without worrying about paychecks, when I can afford to save for a future that feels stable. Maybe someday, I'll buy that car, move to a place that feels like home, start building something more solid. But for now, the reality is tough, and the future feels uncertain. I'm learning to live in this tension, balancing between survival and hope, between frustration and determination. The system may trap me for now, but I refuse to let it define who I am or what I'm capable of. This isn't the story I dreamed of writing, but it's mine, raw and real, and maybe that's where change begins. If anything, this struggle has taught me resilience, a stubborn hope that even in the face of crushing pressure, I can keep moving forward. Not because the road is easy, but because I have to believe it will get better. And maybe one day, it will. I never thought I'd find myself in this place, constantly treading water, the surface of my life a choppy mix of bills, debts, and dreams I keep shelving. It's strange how the world moves on around me, prices climbing, rent soaring, necessities becoming luxuries, while my paycheck seems stuck in a loop, barely inching forward. Every day feels like trying to catch a train that's already left the station, or like running on a treadmill that speeds up just as I find my rhythm. I'm 27, working full-time, juggling 2 jobs sometimes just to make ends meet. But even with that, the numbers don't add up. Rent alone swallows nearly half of what I bring home each month. Utilities, groceries, transportation, phone bills, they pile up. I've gotten so good at scanning for sales, clipping coupons, skipping meals, and canceling plans that it's almost become a second nature, a survival skill I didn't ask to master. I remember when I thought budgeting was just a casual suggestion, not a lifeline. The economic environment feels like this invisible beast lurking just behind me, always ready to snap. Inflation keeps chipping away at whatever small gains I make. The cost of living climbs faster than my salary or any raise I could realistically hope for. It's not just about paying the bills, it's about the constant anxiety, the weight of not knowing if I can afford a doctor's visit or a new pair of shoes when the old ones finally give out. I watch prices rise on the shelves, and it's like the walls around me are closing in, tightening the space where I can breathe. I think about the people I went to school with, the ones who dreamed big, traveling, owning homes, starting families, and I can't help but feel a pang of envy mixed with frustration. It's not that I'm lazy or unambitious, I have dreams too, but they feel like distant stars I'm not allowed to reach. Buying my own apartment? Forget it. Saving for a vacation? That's a joke now. Even little things like going out with friends or buying a decent meal feel like indulgences I can't afford without guilt gnawing at me. The pressure gnaws at my emotional well-being. Some days I wake up feeling defeated before I've even stepped out of bed. There's a quiet loneliness to this struggle, too. Most people don't see the internal battle of counting pennies and rationing hopes. Sometimes, I'm afraid to admit just how hard it is, worried that it'll make me seem weak or incapable. But the truth is, it wears me down. The constant stress bleeds into everything, my sleep, my relationships, my ability to focus. It's exhausting to live in a state of perpetual caution. I try to cope in small ways. I've taken up running in the mornings, a cheap therapy to clear my head before the day's worries flood in. I write in a journal sometimes, spilling out the frustrations and fears I can't voice aloud. I've found little pockets of joy, a call with a close friend, a sunset scene from my cramped apartment window, that remind me there's still life beyond the numbers. But these moments are fleeting, and the heaviness always returns. Sometimes, late at night, I let myself imagine a different future. A future where I'm not so shackled by financial strain, where I have the freedom to say yes to opportunities without hesitation. I picture a small, sunlit apartment filled with books and plants, a steady job that pays enough to save a little, and weekends spent exploring places instead of worrying about expenses. But these are dreams that require patience and resilience, qualities I'm trying to build, even when the system feels designed to break me. I've learned that this isn't just my struggle, it's a shared experience for so many young adults today. The promises of the past, that hard work guarantees stability, feel hollow when expenses escalate out of control. It's a cycle that feels endless, a game rigged against the little guy. But I hold on to hope. I hold on to the belief that persistence matters, that change is possible, even if it takes longer than I imagined. For now, I keep moving forward, step by step. I count the small victories, paying off a debt, managing to put aside a few dollars, reaching the end of the month without crisis. I remind myself that this is not a failure but a chapter in a longer story. One day, I hope to look back and see how these tough years shaped me, how they made me stronger, wiser, and more determined to create the life I deserve. Until then, I keep fighting the invisible beast. Because giving up isn't an option, not when there's still a glimmer of light ahead, no matter how faint. And maybe, just maybe, that light will grow bright enough to guide me out of this maze of financial pressure and into a space where I can finally breathe easy. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. It's hard to put into words exactly what it feels like to be caught in this slow, suffocating squeeze where money never seems to stretch as far as it needs to. I'm 27 now, and for as long as I can remember, it's been this endless cycle. The paycheck comes in, the bills take it away, and whatever's left barely covers the basics, if it covers anything at all. It's exhausting, honestly. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. I wake up each day with this low hum of anxiety buzzing just beneath the surface, like a constant reminder that no matter how hard I work, it's never quite enough. I grew up believing that if you put in the effort, if you stayed focused, you'd eventually get ahead. You'd be able to afford a decent place, a little financial breathing room, maybe even a vacation or two. But now, staring at my monthly budget, I realize how naive that was. The reality is a lot darker. Rent keeps climbing. Groceries get more expensive every time I walk into the store. Utilities, insurance, transportation, all these costs just keep inching up, faster than I can keep pace. Meanwhile, my income has been mostly stagnant, occasionally nudged up by a small raise, but not nearly enough to bridge the growing gap. I work full-time, putting in the hours at a job that barely feels like it's mine, a means to an end rather than a source of joy. The job market feels like a trap too. You need experience to get a better paying job, but how do you get experience when you're stuck working in a low-wage position? And even when I consider switching jobs or picking up a side hustle, I have to weigh the reality of burnout. I'm already stretched thin. Every decision feels like a trade-off between survival and sanity. The pressure isn't just financial, it gnaws at my sense of self-worth. I know I'm not lazy. I'm not careless. I try to budget, to save, to plan ahead, but somehow the numbers don't add up. There's a feeling of invisibility too, like I'm just a small cog in this vast economic machine that doesn't care if I sink or swim. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you start to feel like you're failing, even though you're doing everything you can. It's a bitter, isolating place to be. Some days, I can't help but compare myself to others my age, friends buying homes, traveling, starting families, and I feel this gnawing sting of jealousy and inadequacy. But I know that comparison is a trap. Everyone's path is different, and many people are struggling behind closed doors just like me. Still, it's hard not to feel stuck when your dreams are on pause indefinitely. Speaking of dreams, I've had to shelve a lot of them. I wanted to go back to school, maybe get a degree or a certification that could open doors. But tuition isn't cheap, and taking on more debt feels like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. I dreamed of moving out of my cramped apartment and into a space that felt like home, but the rent prices laugh in my face every time I search listings. I wanted to start saving for a future, a car, a vacation, even retirement, but those goals seem like luxuries when just paying the bills feels like a full-time job. I cope in small ways. I cut back where I can, cooking at home instead of eating out, canceling subscriptions, hunting for sales. I find solace in the little things, a walk in the park, a good book, a phone call with a friend. I try to remind myself that my current situation isn't permanent, that it's okay to ask for help, and that I'm more than my bank account. But on the tougher days, the weight of it all feels crushing. What keeps me going? Hope. I know it sounds cliché, but hope is the only thing that stops me from giving up completely. Hope that maybe one day, the economy will shift, that wages will catch up, that I'll find a job that pays fairly for the work I do. Hope that I can break free from this cycle, even if it takes years. Hope that I'll find peace and stability, and maybe, just maybe, start chasing those postponed dreams again. Living through this has made me more empathetic, more aware of the hidden struggles that so many people face. It's taught me that financial pressure isn't just about numbers, it's about the emotional toll, the anxiety, the constant juggling act, and the quiet desperation that's so easy to overlook. It's real, and it's painful. So, if I could say one thing to anyone reading this, it would be this: if you're feeling trapped too, you're not alone. It's okay to be vulnerable about it. It's okay to admit it's hard. And it's okay to hope for better, because that hope is the first step toward change, even when everything feels like it's working against you. I never thought I'd feel this way, constantly stretched thin, as if my life was a rubber band pulled so tight it might snap any moment. But here I am, 26 years old, juggling bills, rent, groceries, and the rising cost of everything, while my paycheck stubbornly refuses to keep pace. It's this relentless pressure, this gnawing sense that no matter how hard I work, I'm always behind, always scrambling to catch up. And the worst part? Feeling utterly trapped in a system that seems designed to keep me just afloat, never ahead, never free. It's not that I'm lazy or careless. Far from it. I clock long hours at a job I don't love but that pays the rent, hoping someday to find something better. I've cut back wherever I can, no more nights out, no more takeout, rarely any new clothes, and almost never any treats. I've learned to stretch every dollar, clipping coupons, scanning discount apps, and cooking at home like a pro. But the truth is, none of that feels enough. When rent hikes by $50, utility bills rise, or the grocery store shelves shrink while prices climb, all my sacrifices barely move the needle. Some days, it feels like I'm running on a treadmill set to a speed I can't control, watching the numbers on the screen spike but my feet never leave the same spot. And emotionally? It's exhausting. There's this constant knot in my stomach, a low-level anxiety that bubbles up the moment I open my bank app or stare at the overdue notices piling on my desk. Sleep comes in fits, dreams clouded by numbers and deadlines, and mornings are often met with a sense of dread. How much will I owe this month? Will I make it through without borrowing from friends or credit cards? What if something unexpected happens, a car repair, a medical bill, or even just my phone breaking down? The weight of all this pressure shapes every choice I make, often in ways I never imagined. I've had to say no to so many things: weddings, trips with friends, even simple joys like new books or concerts. For a while, I believed I'd bounce back soon, that this was just a phase before my career took off, before I could afford to live the life I dreamed of. But that hope feels fragile now, like it's fading under the constant drip of reality. Even my dreams have had to take a back seat. I used to imagine buying a small apartment of my own, maybe even starting a business someday. I pictured weekends spent traveling or just relaxing without the cloud of financial worry hanging over me. Instead, I'm holding on to the bare minimum, crossing my fingers that I won't have to move back in with my parents or sacrifice my health just to stay afloat. Coping with all this hasn't been easy. I've found comfort in small things: a walk in the park, a good book borrowed from the library, or connecting with friends who understand the struggle. I try to remind myself that I'm not alone in this, that millions of people are feeling the squeeze right now. Sometimes I journal, writing down my fears and frustrations as a way to release some of the pressure. Other times, I just breathe deeply and try to hold on to the fact that this, too, shall pass. Yet, there's a deep, quiet sadness beneath it all. It's the sadness of watching the world around me move forward, housing markets booming, new tech gadgets flooding the stores, and others chasing their dreams, while I'm stuck in place, caught in the slow grind of bills and budgets. I wonder if this feeling of being trapped will ever lift. Will I ever break free from this cycle where expenses outpace my income, where every pay raise is swallowed by inflation or rising costs? Will I be able to reclaim the dreams I've shelved for later, or has later become an indefinite wait? I don't have all the answers. But I do know this, I'm trying. Every day, I keep going, even when it feels impossible. I hold on to hope, even if it's fragile. Because somewhere beneath the exhaustion and fear, I still believe in a future where I'm not just surviving, but truly living. Some days, it feels like I'm sinking in quicksand. The harder I try to pull myself out, the deeper I get. The weight pressing down isn't just the bills piling up on my kitchen table, it's this relentless pressure from an economy that seems designed to keep people like me just barely afloat. I'm 27, working 2 jobs, and yet, no matter how many hours I clock, my bank balance barely grows. The expenses creep up faster than I can stretch every dollar, and every month ends with a little less hope than the one before. I remember when I graduated college, full of hope and energy. I had dreams, big ones, traveling the world, buying my own place, maybe even starting a little side hustle doing graphic design, something creative that made me feel alive. But reality hit hard and fast. The job market wasn't forgiving, and the salary offers didn't match the cost of living. I moved back into my childhood bedroom for a while, feeling like I was stalling life instead of launching it. Now, my apartment is small and cramped, but it's mine, barely. Rent consumes more than half my income, which means groceries, utilities, transportation, and the occasional small luxury all compete for what's left. And there's never much left. I constantly balance and rebalance, choosing between paying for the bus or buying a few fresh vegetables, between skipping a night out with friends or dipping into my emergency fund. Sometimes, I feel invisible, like the system doesn't see me at all. Inflation eats away at my paycheck before it even hits my account. Prices for everything, from coffee to rent to gas, seem to rise every month, but my wages stay stubbornly flat. It's as if I'm running on a treadmill that's speeding up, but my legs can't go any faster. No matter how hard I try to keep pace, I'm stuck in place, or worse, falling behind. The emotional toll is exhausting. Anxiety creeps in every time I open a bill or check my bank app. I find myself holding my breath before seeing my balance, hoping against hope there's enough to cover my essentials. Sometimes I cry in the quiet of my room because I'm overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of it all. It's hard to explain this to others who seem to have things under control or, worse, think I'm lazy or irresponsible. I'm not. I'm working harder than ever, but it feels like a losing game. Social life takes a hit, too. Friends invite me out for dinner or concerts, but I often have to say no, not because I don't want to, but because the math just doesn't add up. I feel isolated, watching others live the kind of life I dreamed about while I ration my time and money to survive. The simple joy of spontaneous plans feels like a luxury I can't afford. Despite everything, I try to hold on to hope. I remind myself that this isn't forever. I still dream, quietly, sometimes secretly, about what could be. Maybe someday I'll have a stable job that pays enough for me to breathe without constant worry. Maybe I'll buy a little place that's mine, where I can invite friends without stressing about whether I can afford it. Maybe I'll save enough to travel, to see the world beyond this financial cage. I cope in little ways. I've learned to find joy in small, free moments, a walk in the park, a good book borrowed from the library, a homemade meal made with care. I try to practice gratitude for what I have, even when it feels insufficient. And I talk about it, here and there, with people who listen without judgment, because silence only deepens the loneliness. This ongoing financial pressure is more than numbers and bills, it's a drain on my spirit. It shapes my decisions, limits my choices, and weighs heavily on my dreams. But I keep going. I keep hoping. Because despite the system that feels rigged against me, I want to believe there's a way out, a better tomorrow waiting on the other side of this struggle. It's hard to even pinpoint when the weight started feeling unbearable. I think it's been creeping up slowly, like the tide rising under my feet, until one day I realized I was drowning in bills and worry. I'm 27 now, working 2 jobs, and still, there's this gnawing sense that no matter how hard I push, I'm stuck on a treadmill going nowhere. Every month feels like a tightrope walk, trying not to fall into that pit of debt and desperation everyone talks about but no one really understands until they're in it. I grew up thinking if I just got a decent job, worked hard, I'd be okay. I'd have enough to live comfortably, maybe even save up for things like traveling or buying a home someday. But reality hit like a brick wall after college. The job market was brutal, the pay was barely enough to cover rent, and the cost of living seemed to shoot up overnight. Rent, groceries, transportation, health insurance, all these things, they just keep creeping higher and higher. It's like they have a life of their own, and my paycheck is just a single grain of sand trying to hold back a flood. Most days, I wake up already anxious about money. I check my bank account like a nervous habit, half expecting it to be emptier than before. There's this constant mental math in my head. How much did I spend on coffee yesterday? Could I have packed a lunch instead? Is it worth missing out on that night with friends to save $20? The decisions that used to seem trivial now carry the weight of survival. Every dollar is a choice, and often it feels like the only choice is sacrifice. I've stopped going out as much. It's not just about saving money, it's about preserving my mental energy. Social events mean spending, and spending means stress. Sometimes I catch myself smiling less, holding back laughter because I'm worried about the future. The joy in the little things, a movie, a weekend trip, even just eating out, they've become luxuries I can't justify. And that loneliness creeps in, silent but heavy. I miss feeling carefree. I miss not having to calculate the cost of happiness. The pressure doesn't just sit on my wallet, it's on my shoulders, my mind, my heart. At night, when the world quiets down, my brain races through worst-case scenarios. What if I lose one of my jobs? What if the car breaks down? What if I get sick and can't afford the doctor? The financial stress blurs into physical stress, tight shoulders, a knot in my stomach, restless sleep. Some nights I cry quietly, feeling ashamed for not being better with money, for not having a safety net, for the dreams I'm forced to shelve. Speaking of dreams, I had a lot. I wanted to travel the world, to see places beyond the tiny city bubble I grew up in. I dreamed of writing a novel, of going back to school, of buying a little apartment that felt like my own space. But those dreams feel so distant now, like stars flickering just out of reach. The truth is, I've had to postpone or completely give up on so many of them. Saving for emergencies has to come first, and when every paycheck disappears into rent and essentials, there's no room left for aspirations. Coping is a daily struggle. Sometimes I throw myself into work, convincing myself that extra hours will get me closer to stability. Other times, I try to find solace in small routines, a walk in the park, a quiet moment with a book, a call with a friend who understands without judgment. I also find unexpected comfort in the community around me. Talking openly with others about money struggles has been surprisingly healing. It reminds me I'm not alone in this, even if it feels like I'm drowning most days. Yet, even with all the hardship, I cling to hope. I hope for a day when I don't have to count every penny, when I can breathe without this constant financial pressure squeezing my chest. I hope to rebuild the dreams I shelved, maybe even build new ones that fit the reality I'm living now. I want to believe the system that feels so rigged against people like me can change, or at least that I can find a way to work within it and find peace. Being trapped in a system where expenses grow faster than income isn't just a financial struggle, it's a fight for dignity, for freedom, for a sense of self beyond paycheck to paycheck existence. I'm learning to be patient with myself, to celebrate small victories, and to hold on to the fragile thread of hope even when the world feels heavy and unfair. This story isn't just mine. It's the story of so many young adults trying to navigate a world where survival feels like a full-time job, and dreams are both a balm and a burden. Maybe someday, sharing this honestly will help someone else feel less alone, because feeling trapped doesn't have to mean giving up. I never thought I'd be this person, constantly watching every penny, feeling like I'm stuck in a financial treadmill that only speeds up while I stay exactly where I am. But here I am, a 26-year-old trying to piece together a life in a world where everything costs more than I can really afford, and my income feels like it's barely holding steady, even as bills pile up higher and higher. Every morning starts the same way. I wake up, check my bank account, and brace myself. There's that sinking feeling in my chest when I see the balance, knowing full well that it doesn't stretch as far as it should. Rent, utilities, groceries, the random car repair that always seems to sneak in at the worst time, it all adds up so fast. The numbers never seem to lie, but they never tell the whole story either. They don't tell you about the stress that builds quietly, like a weight sitting on your chest that you can't shrug off. It's like the system is designed to keep me on edge, always feeling like one unexpected expense away from collapse. I remember the days when I thought I could save for something bigger, maybe a trip, a new laptop, or even just a night out without worrying about the cost. Those dreams feel distant now, like something from a different lifetime. Every dollar I earn goes toward keeping the lights on and the fridge stocked, and maybe, if I'm lucky, I can scrape together a little for the future. But even that future feels vague and unreachable sometimes. The economic environment around me seems to be shifting constantly, and not in my favor. Inflation means prices creep up almost monthly, but my paycheck? It's been stagnant for years. The pay raises I hear about are either tiny or non-existent, and the hours I can work are capped by the job's availability or my own health. I don't think people outside of this experience really understand the constant tension. It's not just about money, it's about the mental toll. Every purchase feels like a risk. Do I spend the extra few dollars on healthier food, or do I buy the cheaper option that might leave me feeling sluggish later? Should I skip the doctor's appointment because the copay is too much? I catch myself thinking about these things all the time, and it's exhausting. There's no room to breathe or plan because I'm always just reacting, plugging holes in a dam that's leaking faster than I can fix it. Socially, it's isolating too. Friends talk about weekend getaways, dinners out, or even just casual drinks after work. I smile and say yes sometimes, but mostly I decline. It's easier to say no than to explain why I can't afford it without feeling ashamed. There's a stigma in admitting you're struggling financially when you're supposed to be a young adult with a stable job and a future ahead of you. But I'm far from stable. Some nights I lie awake wondering if I'll ever get ahead, if I'll ever feel secure enough to stop counting every expense. To cope, I've learned to be incredibly resourceful. Meal prepping, hunting for discounts, using public transportation instead of owning a car, it all helps, but it also reminds me how much I'm sacrificing. I spend hours scrolling through budget blogs or personal finance forums, looking for that one tip or hack that might change things. And sometimes, I feel grateful for the small wins, like finding a cheaper phone plan or catching a sale on something I need, but it's bittersweet. These little victories feel like drops in an ocean of challenges. Some days, the pressure seeps into my self-worth. It's hard not to feel like I'm failing, like I'm not good enough because I can't make it work the way I thought I would. I try to remind myself that the system is broken, not me. But those thoughts sneak in anyway. It's a hard balance to maintain, between holding on to hope and facing reality. I want to believe that things will get better, that maybe if I keep pushing, I'll find a way out of this cycle. But sometimes hope feels fragile, like a thread ready to snap under the weight of the next bill or unexpected expense. I've had to postpone so many dreams. The apartment I wanted in a safer neighborhood, the further education I thought I could afford, even simple things like a vacation to recharge. All those plans feel like luxuries now, distant and out of reach. It's painful, but I try to keep my focus on what's possible. I remind myself that postponing doesn't mean giving up. I still dream of a life where money isn't the constant shadow looming over every decision. A life where I can build something lasting without the fear of falling behind. This ongoing financial pressure has changed me. It's made me more cautious, more resilient in some ways, but also more vulnerable in ways I never expected. I carry the weight every day, and sometimes I feel trapped in a system that's built to keep people like me running but never getting ahead. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And somewhere beneath the worry and the exhaustion, there's a spark of hope that one day, maybe, I'll break free. For now, I hold on to that hope as best as I can, even when the numbers don't add up. I never thought I'd be writing my own story like this, raw and unfiltered, spilling out what I usually keep bottled inside. But here I am, trying to make sense of this strange, heavy feeling that's become my constant companion. It's this strange mix of exhaustion, hope, frustration, and fear that I can't shake. Maybe sharing it will help. Maybe not. But it feels important to say it out loud. I'm 27, living in a small apartment in the city, working a job that barely covers the bills. It wasn't always like this. There was a time, just a few years ago, when I thought I had it all figured out. I graduated college, landed a decent job, and felt like I was on a track that would lead somewhere better. But life didn't stick to that script. The cost of living kept climbing, rent, groceries, transportation, everything that I need to just get through the day keeps getting more expensive, faster than my paycheck grows. It's like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up no matter how hard I push. Every month feels like a tightrope walk. I start by calculating all my expenses, rent, utilities, food, phone bill, transport, and then I see what's left for anything else, clothes, social outings, saving. Spoiler, there's almost never anything left. Some months I have to choose between filling the fridge or topping up my phone. And the worst part? I feel trapped. Trapped in this system where I'm working hard, but the harder I work, the less it feels like I get ahead. It's a strange feeling, like you're swimming upstream, but the current is just too strong. Sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, mind racing about bills I can't pay or unexpected expenses like a broken phone or a doctor's visit. I try to stay calm, remind myself I'm doing what I can, but the anxiety clings tight. I don't talk about this stuff much. Who wants to hear about money struggles when everyone seems to be hustling and thriving on Instagram? There's a shame attached to it, like I've failed somehow, or that I'm not managing my life right. But the truth is, it's not about managing better, it's about the system itself. The economy isn't designed for people like me to just get by, let alone get ahead. Some days, the pressure gets so heavy that I retreat inward. I stop answering calls, avoid texts from friends inviting me out because I know I can't afford it. I try to convince myself it's temporary, that next month will be better. But those moments of isolation sting the most. Loneliness wraps around me when I see my friends post pictures from weekend trips, nice dinners, or new gadgets I can only dream about. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to travel, explore different countries, write a book, maybe even start a small business one day. But those dreams feel like distant stars now, shimmering far beyond my reach. Instead of saving for a plane ticket, I'm saving just to cover the next rent increase. Instead of buying a camera to capture stories, I'm clutching onto every cent for groceries. The future feels blurry, and the dreams I once nurtured are tucked away in the back of my mind, waiting for a time that might never come. Still, I try to find ways to cope. I've learned to live frugally, stretching every dollar as far as it can go. I meal prep like a pro, shop sales, avoid unnecessary outings, and find joy in simple things, a good book, a walk in the park, talking with a close friend who understands without judgment. Sometimes, I journal like this, pouring my thoughts out so they don't swallow me whole. These small acts of control help, even if just a little. But beneath it all, I'm scared. Scared that the cost of living will keep rising and my wages won't. Scared that I'll never break free from this cycle of paycheck to paycheck living. Scared that my dreams will wither away quietly in the background of this financial struggle. And yet, there's still a flicker of hope. Hope that one day, things will change, not just for me but for everyone feeling this way. I know I'm not alone. So many people my age are trapped in this same maze, trying to find a way out. And maybe that's why I'm writing this, to remind myself and others that it's okay to be vulnerable, to feel overwhelmed, but still hold on to hope. Because even in the middle of this struggle, I want to believe that better days are ahead, that my story isn't defined by financial pressure, but by the resilience to keep moving forward. So here I am, still swimming upstream, still breathing, still dreaming, no matter how far those dreams feel. And maybe that's enough for now. A young adult just trying to make it through. I never thought I'd end up here, scraping by, day after day, with this gnawing feeling that no matter how hard I work, I'm always just one step behind. Growing up, I had dreams like everyone else, traveling, owning a little home, maybe starting a family someday. But the reality of being a young adult in this economy is nothing like those dreams. It's more like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up just when you think you might catch your breath. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of my alarm, already dreading the commute to my job, where I put in long hours for a paycheck that barely covers my essentials. Rent is the first giant weight on my shoulders. I live in a tiny apartment that's far from the city center because that's all I can afford. It's cramped, noisy, and honestly, a little depressing, but it's home for now. The landlord just raised the rent again this year, like clockwork, while my salary has barely budged. Utilities, groceries, transportation, and those surprise expenses, car repairs, medical bills, the occasional emergency, keep stacking up. Each month feels like a game of financial Jenga, trying to balance it all without everything collapsing. Sometimes I sit down with my bank app and just stare at the numbers, hoping for a miracle. But the numbers don't change, no matter how much I cross things off my list or cut back on what I buy. I've stopped eating out completely, stopped buying clothes unless it's absolutely necessary, and I've canceled every subscription I had, streaming services, gym memberships, everything. Even then, the savings are so small, it barely makes a dent. And when I see my friends posting pictures of their weekend getaways or new gadgets, I'm happy for them, but there's also this pang of jealousy and sadness because those things feel so out of reach. The worst part isn't even the money itself, it's the feeling of being trapped. Like no matter what I do, I'm caught in this system where the cost of living rises faster than I can earn. Inflation is a constant whisper in the back of my mind, growing louder every month as prices creep up on everything: food, gas, rent, insurance. I've started to fear what the future holds because if things keep going this way, I don't see how I'll ever get ahead, or even just be stable. Some nights, I lie awake, thinking about the dreams I've had to postpone or completely give up on. I wanted to go back to school, finish a degree that could open doors to better jobs, but tuition costs are insane, and the idea of more student loans terrifies me. I wanted to travel, to see the world beyond this tiny bubble, but those plane tickets and hotels aren't just luxuries, they feel like impossible fantasies. I wanted to save enough to buy a car, something reliable, so I wouldn't have to rely on buses that make me late or force me to wake up hours earlier. Instead, I'm stuck with this old, barely working bike and a wallet that feels emptier by the day. Emotionally, it's exhausting. There's this constant anxiety that sits on my chest, the stress that wakes me up in the middle of the night. I feel isolated sometimes because talking about money is taboo. People expect you to have it all figured out by now, but I don't. I don't have a safety net, no family support to fall back on, and very few close friends who understand the pressure I'm under. Social gatherings often feel like minefields. Will I have to say no again? Should I lie about why I can't join the dinner or the movie? It's lonely to feel so constrained by something that everyone else seems to manage. But I'm learning to cope, bit by bit. I've started budgeting religiously, tracking every penny, which feels both freeing and depressing at the same time. I try to find small joys, like reading books from the library, cooking simple meals at home, or walking in the park when the weather's nice. I've found a few communities online where people share their stories about living with financial stress, and it helps to know I'm not alone. Therapy helps too, even if it's just a few sessions here and there when I can afford it. Despite all the hardship, I still cling to hope. Maybe someday things will shift, the economy might improve, wages might catch up, or I might land a job that pays enough to breathe a little easier. I want to believe that the sacrifices I'm making now will pay off somehow. That this isn't the end of my story, but just a difficult chapter. I dream about a future where I'm not constantly counting every dollar, where I can relax and maybe even splurge a little. I dream of a day when I can help others who are stuck like I am, or start a family without this shadow of financial fear hanging over us. For now, I take it one day at a time, trying to hold on to that fragile thread of hope. It's hard, sometimes unbearable, but I keep moving forward because giving up isn't an option. Not yet, not ever. That's my reality, a young adult caught in a relentless economic squeeze, feeling trapped yet still dreaming. It's messy, painful, and uncertain, but it's mine. I never imagined adulthood would feel like this, like I'm stuck in a hamster wheel that's speeding up, while I'm running slower and slower. Every day, I wake up with this knot in my chest, a tight, silent pressure that never really leaves. It's the weight of bills, rent, groceries, and everything else that just keeps piling up, growing faster than the paycheck I bring home. I want to be honest about this because it's exhausting living like this, always juggling expenses, always one step behind, and yet nobody really talks about how raw and lonely it feels. I'm 26, and by any reasonable standard, I'm doing okay. I have a job, a modest apartment, and a few friends I can count on. But okay is such a fragile state when you're living paycheck to paycheck, and the cost of everything around you keeps climbing. Last year, rent went up again, by almost 10%. I know that's less than what some people are dealing with in the city, but for me, it's like a punch to the gut. I've thought about moving somewhere cheaper, but the cost of moving, deposits, and the risk of losing a stable, if barely sustainable, routine makes me hesitate. So here I am, stuck. I still remember when I first started this job, a little over 3 years ago. The salary was just enough to cover rent, groceries, and a few small luxuries, like eating out once in a while, or grabbing a coffee with friends. Back then, I felt hopeful. I even started thinking about saving for a future that looked bright. Maybe a trip abroad, maybe a car someday, maybe even starting a family in the distant future. But each year since then, my salary has barely kept pace with inflation, and inflation hasn't been kind, it's more like a roaring tide swallowing everything in its path. The money just isn't stretching like it used to. Every month, I sit down with a spreadsheet, trying to make sense of my expenses. It's almost a ritual now, but it's heartbreaking. I cut corners wherever I can. I skip that new jacket even though I need one for winter. I cook all my meals at home, which means no spontaneous dinners or drinks with friends. I avoid calling my family because I can't afford long-distance calls or visits. Some months, I even debate whether I can justify the electricity bill, turning off lights and unplugging chargers obsessively. It's humiliating to admit, but sometimes I go to bed hungry just so I don't spend money on food. I hate that feeling. The thing is, I don't think this pressure is just about money, it's about how it makes me feel trapped. Like I'm on this endless treadmill where I run faster and faster just to stay in place. I watch people around me buying homes, starting businesses, and chasing dreams, while I'm here calculating whether I can afford a bus ticket next week. It's like the system is designed so that expenses outpace income, and we get caught in this cycle of surviving rather than thriving. The emotional toll is overwhelming. I wake up anxious and go to sleep stressed, always thinking about the next bill, the next unexpected expense, the next emergency that could break me. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just bad at managing money or if I'm not trying hard enough. But the truth is, I've tried everything I can think of. I budgeted strictly, picked up extra shifts, applied for higher-paying jobs, even considered side gigs that would drain me even more. Nothing seems to close the gap. And that gap isn't just about numbers, it's about hope. Every month that slips by without progress chips away at my dreams. Speaking of dreams, I've had to put so many of mine on hold. I used to want to travel, see the world, meet new people, experience different cultures. Now, I don't even buy a ticket to visit my own family, afraid of the cost. I wanted to go back to school, to get a degree that might open new doors, but tuition and living expenses feel like a mountain too high to climb. I dreamed about saving to buy a home, but even the idea feels like a joke when rent eats up half my paycheck. Those dreams didn't vanish overnight, they just faded slowly, like distant stars behind a thick fog of financial reality. Coping with this reality isn't easy. Some days, I just shut down emotionally because the weight is too much. Other days, I try to find small pockets of joy, walking in the park, reading books from the library, talking to friends online. I've learned to appreciate the little things because the big things seem so far out of reach. I also keep reminding myself that I'm not alone, even if it feels that way. So many people my age, or even older, are living this kind of struggle silently, caught in the same cycle. That thought doesn't make it easier, but it helps me feel a little less isolated. I'm scared for the future. I'm scared that the system will keep squeezing people like me, that economic inequality will widen, and that my generation will be defined by what we didn't get to do rather than what we achieved. But I'm also stubbornly hopeful. I still believe in a life where I can breathe without this constant financial pressure. Maybe one day, I'll find a job that pays fairly and gives me room to grow. Maybe the economy will shift, and prices will stabilize. Maybe I'll get that chance to travel or go back to school. For now, I take it one day at a time, trying not to let the anxiety swallow me whole. I remind myself that survival isn't failure, even if it feels like it sometimes. I hold on to the hope that this pressure is temporary, even when it feels permanent. And I try to be gentle with myself, because living under this kind of stress is tough, and it takes strength just to keep going. This story is my truth, the truth of so many young adults feeling trapped by a system where expenses grow faster than income, where dreams have to wait, and where hope is a fragile but necessary thing to hold on to. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.